And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather, looking at magnetohydrodynamic pressure here over the past 4 hours. It's our geospace magnetosphere movie, Earth's Magnetic Moment from Space. You're looking at about 12 Earth diameters. And we do have a high-speed coronal hole wind stream striking the magnetosphere at the moment. High-speed solar protons there causing some increased magnetohydrodynamic pressure. The scale you're looking at is nanopascals. And again, that was 4 hours. We'll also look at ground magnetic perturbations. And we're going to show the polar view today, as it's not really any sort of a geomagnetic storm or anything like that. Giving you some insight into Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. The scale here is nanotesla magnetic flux density. We'll let that play through so we don't need to edit the video. So like the last frame, that's 4 hours of data. It's all based on the space weather modeling framework, which uses lots of variables to create that model. So that's the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet. The plasma that the sun puts out is oriented to one pole or the other. Earth is in a south pole current sheet, and that's about to change. So there's a North Pole current sheet headed this way. You can see that in green there. It's just reached stereo A, and it should be at Earth in a day or two. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can suddenly change. So here are the past 7 days of the GOES magnetometer. Now I just wanted to bring up the 7-day chart here to show this big spike in the past, well, yesterday, frankly, where we saw the GOES 16 measure all the way up to over 180 nanotesla there. Normally we show the 3-day chart, so there is the 3-day chart. And you can see a divergence happening once again here, near midnight local time for the GOES 17, which is that blue line. Here's your line of sight ecliptic plane field plot, and you can see that green heliospheric North Pole oriented current sheet headed this way. Here's your line of sight coronal hole plot, and we've got South Pole oriented coronal holes here once again showing up in the east and west. There's a bit of a mix happening over here. Once again, you can see a North Pole and a South Pole oriented coronal hole there reaching down toward the equator. It's a bit of a magnetic tug of war in terms of the coronal hole plot. This plot also shows the solar B field in blue. Those blue lines there, those are the B field, the field that goes through the magnet being the sun. So here's 193 angstroms, a great wavelength from the SDO at showing coronal holes, and you can see at least one North Pole oriented coronal hole up here, South Pole ones down here. And let's continue on to look at sunspots. The likelihood of major flares has gone down a bit in the past couple of days. This sunspot over here is certainly interesting, and 2941 has remained mostly stable over the past 24. It's still certainly capable of producing large flares. Watch our previous video for some M-class solar flare activity. There'll be another video coming out as well with more close-ups. It's our bonus features segment. This is our magnetic fields and features section. So there are the sunspots, 1700 angstroms is the wavelength there. And this sunspot here has grown a little bit, and the umbrae have moved apart from each other. So we see the the South Pole leading umbra there moving a little bit toward the equator, and the trailing North Pole umbra there kind of hanging out. So here's this M-class flare. The peak flux of that was around 8:40 universal time early this morning, just a couple of hours ago. And make sure you follow us on Twitter for all kinds of updates that you'll never see anyplace else. It's a great networking location, twitter.com/smashamash. I don't care who's been banned. I mean, I care who's been banned, but nonetheless, you should be on Twitter. We will endeavor to not get deplatformed. So here's 131 angstroms. This is another great wavelength to view solar flares. See that M-class flare down here in the southwestern quadrant. 'N' 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 'N Let's blast through more data. No spikes in the proton flux there, so no relativistic particles have arrived yet from that solar flare moment. We'll be keeping an eye on that, and when I say ion, well, pardon the pun. So here's your high-speed coronal hole wind stream. You can see this standard signature, an increase in the solar wind density to over 40 protons per cubic centimeter there. And then as the density drops, the speed comes up, the typical signature of a coronal hole wind stream. Current conditions are about 9 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density, solar wind velocity, 520 kilometers per second. Here's even more information. The KP index down to 2. We saw a brief period of geomagnetic storm before midnight once again in the latter hours of February 11th. Next, a diagram of the solar system. We're going to give you a 1-week forecast. Here's where things are now. There's where they'll be in a week. Here's a star chart. This is what's going on above my head. We've got Mars, Mercury, and Venus, and Saturn rising ahead of the sun. If you've got a low horizon, it's a great morning to get up pre-dawn and look at a planetary pileup. The blue line is the galactic plane. The yellow line is the ecliptic, the path the sun's taking across the sky. That's from Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. This star chart from in-the-sky.org. It's the all-sky chart. Just put in your location if you want to create one for yourself. Last but not least, we're going to show this coronal mass ejection that's been occurring from the perspective of stereo A. The data from the LASCO C2 and C3 are not in yet. So there's that CME, coronal mass ejection right there. Now from this perspective, from Lagrange point 5, Earth would be off in this direction. So as far as the north-south line, it's pretty close to the Earth, because L5 is located here, so it puts Earth off to your right. And again, we don't have data from the LASCO C2 and C3 yet. I would venture to say that this will probably miss Earth to the west because of the location of the M-class solar flare. In any case, thanks for tuning in to our daily space weather video or videos. We've put out 3 today. We'll be coming out with a bonus feature segment here momentarily. We also did a meteorology segment and a previous space weather video. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-a-Mash, signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news.